toenails and blistered heels, saw stains streaking down my face. Sun is beating, muscles scream, but I'm moving at my pace. Run the riot! Leave the world behind! Run the riot! You free your body and your
Hey there, my friends. Welcome to this week's Midweek Motivation with the Run the Riot podcast. So let me ask you a question. Are you a planner? Do people around you like, hey, that guy plans, that girl plans, she really like lays things out? You know, if you listen to the podcast any amount of time, you know I'm a planner. I believe and I love a good spreadsheet when it comes to racing. There's power in a plan. You know, I love to have something to pull out that has an aid station, distances, potential times, nutrition, drop bags, just reminders. Cause you know, you get runner's brain and you need to just have that plan. And, you know, planning shows discipline and it shows intentionality. And I think a lot of people fail because they don't plan. So planning is discipline. And like I said, it shows intention. And if we're going to do a race, then we need to plan. We need to read the manual because we're responsible for knowing what we should and shouldn't do. We should read all about the course. We should look at the course and know what the course looks like, and not rely on others or, you know, because sometimes things happen. Markings get removed. It's happened to probably all of us. If you race any amount of time, especially on trails, junk happens, man. And so we need to plan. But I was thinking about this recent podcast with Cam Ridley, and I was thinking about when the plan breaks down. You know, Cam showed up. He was pretty awesome. If you haven't listened to the podcast, this last podcast interview with him, I encourage you to listen to it. But he talks about he drove all the way from Alabama to help Angela Smith, who was also a guest on the podcast, run this Prairie Spirit 100, where she broke the Kansas State record. And you know, he showed up and she had a plan, they had a plan, he had a plan. And you know, and he said one of the things he talked about was how they had to pivot. They had to change. And so today's this midweek motivation is called plan, but then pivot when you need to. All right. And he talks about Angela hitting a low point during the race, or she needed a massage, and the plan that was on the spreadsheet wasn't cutting it. Now listen, we've got to plan, but we've also got to adapt, because I have been guilty of sticking to the plan, and the plan just runs you into the ground. You have to know when to change the plan. Now, there's an old movie, 80s movie. It's cheesy, but it's one of my favorite. It's called The Golden Child. It's an old Eddie Murphy movie. And he has to go through and to get this knife to kill the bad guy. There's all kind of crazy things going on. And, you know, the old guy tells him, stay on the path. And, you know, as he's going through to get this knife, the bridge that he's supposed to go on explodes and falls into nothing. And he said, I thought you said I had to stay on the path. And the old man says, you have to know when not to stay on the path, you know, or something like that. And so we have to know when we have to change the plan. And one of the things that Cam, he had brought a massage table and everything. And he realized at one point he had to work on her legs and work on some things that were tight. And he's like, I am not going to have her lay down on the ground or lay down on this massage table. We're going to adapt. We're going to have her sit in the chair, and I'm going to work on her in the chair. I'm going to use a chair instead of a table. And that sounds minor, but those little decisions like that, like not holding on to our preconceived notions of what must be during a race, can help us and save us time and help us when we just pivot, even just a little bit. And so he focused more on the immediate physical needs. It's kind of, he called it boxer style care. You know, when a boxer comes in a corner, you can't fix everything, but you can, you jump on what you need to, like, oh, this cut, we're going to have to deal with this cut or this swelling so he can see. And so they're putting ice and they're dealing with things that need to be dealt with immediately. And he met her where she was, you know, and that made all the difference. And so the core message today, the main point is, I want you to think, if you don't have a plan, then you've got nothing to pivot from. But if you hold on to your plan too tightly, you'll miss the chance to adapt and grow. And this applies to running and racing. I just gave examples. Many of you can think of times where you had a plan and you had to adapt, and I can think of multiple examples of a race when when you decide I'm going to use this for fueling, and you have to adapt because your stomach won't take it anymore. You can't palate it anymore. Or you say I'm going to take this amount of electrolytes, or it's hotter or colder than what you planned for, and you have to take more or less electrolytes, more or less fluids. It gets hot or something, and you have to slow your pace down during the heat of the day, or just whatever. There's a myriad of things. It starts to rain. You have to change. If the course gets muddy, you have to change your expectations, change your pace, whatever. In racing, there's so many things, but what I love about ultra running is we can take these lessons, dude, in life so much. We've got to pivot. And we can talk about even training for the race. Sometimes our training has to pivot if we're overly fatigued, or if we're feeling better. We don't necessarily need to have a rest week. If we're feeling good, we can push through a little bit longer before we take a rest, and not just stick to it because it's on the plan. Or sometimes we have to take a rest week earlier. I just had a runner that I'm coaching, just feeling really run down, had a lot of life things going on, and like, all right, let's do a rest week, a week earlier, because you've got to, if you push through it, you can end up being injured, just overtrained. Lots of different things can happen. And so, we do that in training also, but also in life, man. Dude, I've written down like 5 and 10 year plans, but life just like, oh yeah, that's your plan. Or, sometimes I say, yeah, God saw my plan and he laughed because he knew what was coming. And so we have to be ready to pivot. We can't just stick so blindly to our plans. Like I said, in running and racing and training, but dude, in life, because we'll run ourselves into the ground, and that's not a cool thing to do. It's not a good thing to do. It's not a healthy thing to do. And so that's in life, and in our work, in our personal goals. Sometimes we just have to pivot. And maybe you're dealing with something right now, and you said, man, I'm pushing so hard. And you listen, there's a lot of talk about just grinding it out. And I'm going to talk in a minute about grinding things out. And sometimes we need to, but we have to assess when it's time to pivot. When it's time to say, okay, I had this plan. I didn't take all the factors into consideration, or quite frankly, my plan sucked. And so I've got to change things. And so we have to know when it's time to pivot. Here's an example. So this will come out on Wednesday, July 4th weekend. I am doing a Midnight Madness race here in Tulsa. It's one we had in the past, and that they quit doing it for a while, and they're bringing it back. And so of course I'm going to run it. Kathy said, are you going to run it? Cause I ran my, I think it was back in 2017 or 2018. I ran it while I was training for some other big races, ran my PR in the 50 mile. And listen, it's not Louisiana muggy, but it's hot and muggy in Tulsa. And this is along the river, and we ran it. It starts at midnight. And so I ran my fastest 50 mile. I ended up winning the race. I am not in that shape now. But I said, I'll run it. I'll run the 50 mile. And then I was thinking, golly, I'm not in that good enough shape to run a 50 mile. I could grind it out, but maybe I'll just run the 50K. And then I get a message from Kathy like, hey, some people ask, and we're going to do 100 mile instead. Also, but you got to do the first 50 self-supported during the day, and it's going to be hot. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. So I went from wanting to change the 50 mile to a 50K to I'm doing 100, and I'm not in typical 100-mile shape. It's going to be a grind. It's a calculated grind though. And I just kind of want to see, what I can do. I don't have lofty goals or anything. I just want to get it done. It'll be a lot of power hiking. But I'll have to, it's going to be a lot of pivoting. I'm going to have a plan. I'm going to have it laid out, but I'm not sure where my body is physically. I have some things that are going on. My knee's doing a lot better, but I have some other things. And so I hadn't pushed the miles like I normally do. And so I'll just be ready to pivot. I'll be ready to pivot. And so that's what I got going on. Depending on when you listen to this, you might, I don't know, I might do a podcast on the carnage and see about what happens. But in life, you might, while you're training, your long run, might fall apart. Your job might shift, they might need something different. Your family situation might force you to pause. And so we just have to be ready to pivot. Strength isn't just pushing forward blindly. Strength is knowing when to pivot. Be mentally strong too, because we can just, call it beating your head against a wall. We can keep beating your head against a wall where all you're doing is hurting your head, it doesn't help anything. And so yes, I want to encourage you today. I want you to think about that. Maybe you're dealing with, I got to push through. I got to push through. Yeah, sometimes you got to push through, but sometimes you got to pivot. And listen, I am a planner. Yes, plan. Please plan. You have to have something to pivot from. You have to try to plan for the most of the things that you can plan. And so that when things come out from left field, yeah, you can say, okay, I didn't plan for that, right? But I have these other contingencies in place. Make the checklist. I believe in checklists, but stay flexible. Hold on to your plan with open hands. And when things go sideways, don't panic. Don't panic. Pivot with a purpose. Salvage what you can. Figure it out. Just pivot. That's where the real growth happens. If these races were easy and always went according to plan, man, we wouldn't have any cool stories. When I interview people and talk to them, it's always about the thing that they didn't plan for. It's the thing that happened that oh, nobody could plan for that. Or I started hallucinating way early or whatever. And they just pivot and they figure it out. And so I want to encourage you with that today, man, whether it be in your training, in your racing, or in life, plan. Yes, plan, but pivot when you need to. Guys, keep running strong, friends. Embrace the grit, trust the process, and listen, find joy in the process. And if you missed the podcast with Cam, check it out. Just you're listening to this podcast now. It's on YouTube too. It's worth the listen. And listen, if you're watching this on YouTube, I don't say this. I never said this. This is the first time I'm saying this. But listen, like and subscribe. Rate the podcast. Do all that good stuff. If you're listening to it, do that on whatever your podcast platform you're listening on. Rate it. It just helps get it out there. And listen, as always, if you need help with running, I have a few slots open right now, especially since it's summer. Go to www.theriot.run. If you need help in your goals, you need someone to guide you, to hold you accountable to the process, check that out. There's a little form to fill out, and we'll set up a Zoom and we'll talk about it. So check that out. And guys, until next time, hey, keep showing up. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.